I am super excited if there's a test for mitochondrial health or density. What is it actually testing? Do you know?
So it's looking at they actually when you do the blood spot, they bring the mitochondria back in the lab and then they stress it with reactive oxygen species. They're stressing it with different there's about 6 different things they look at. So they're looking at glycolysis versus ketosis. I mean, really very, very intricate. And I think it's like anything, it's the first in the market. Is it going to shift potentially? But it's a dynamic test. So when you get a baseline and then it would be really interesting for you to do, and then you repeat it 4 months later, like they've actually got it broken down to you need lipid support, your membrane's impermeable, or you need mitophagy, you have too many dead cells around, or you need to really work on your nervous system, which is
Yeah.
interesting. So I haven't quite figured out exactly the details of how they're recommending all of that. I
Yeah.
think it's a work in progress, but it's exciting.
Well, and this is my problem with any of the topics around mitochondria is that I think, yes, clearly, obviously, they're important and they play such a big role. Energy production. They seem to be responsive to inputs that we either can or can't sense, but we can't measure it. And without a biomarker, I don't know. Like all of the actually in prep for this talk, I had a list of like all of these different mitochondrial support
Yeah.
supplements. I think I had 30 on there.
Right, and it's
What do
I
we do?
well,
Yeah,
I used to say it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall,
totally.
right? Like, you're just trying all these stuff, and I would still say that sometimes even now today, you'll see somebody respond to NAD like it's the greatest thing that was ever happened to them, and then the next patient has no response at all.
Right.
So, my goal and hope is that as the testing gets more detailed, we're gonna be able to guide people so they're not wasting so much money and time on all the 30 supplements that are
Yeah.
out there.
I mean, some of them are good for other things too. I mean, like you mentioned, what CoQ10, right? So CoQ10 is a valuable tool
Yep.
in a lot of ways. What was the other one you said?
Carnitine.
Carnitine, right? So carnitine, there's benefit for carnitine in other places too. And then it's also so hard with supplements to eliminate the placebo effect.
100%. And I think, if you know that somebody's mitochondria are suffering because of too much ROS, like, should we be giving them antioxidants instead? They don't need direct mitochondrial repair.
Right.
Or is it the mitochondria suffering because of mold exposure? Like, you have to be able to have somebody guide you, and just taking everything is never the right idea.
Yeah. And I think that's the hardest thing about this space is that it's difficult for people to consume enough information and then have enough data about themselves to be able to then apply it. I really hope that in the future we're going to be able to use AI initiatives to help people to steer themselves. Because going back to what we were saying about finding the right functional medicine provider, even if you were to train an army, because right now at LifeMD, I think we have maybe 90, I don't know, 90 or 100 nurse practitioners that are seeing patients. We have an army and we're still barely scratching the surface.
I
And
agree. It's a bigger problem.
yeah, because when I started creating this pathway, and it eventually became very focused on osteoporosis, because that's sort of like for me, it's a really fun space to practice this type of medicine in because we can actually measure it. We can see when bones are getting stronger. We can see when the osteoclast and blast are working. They tell us a story. Love that. But when we would start going down these pathways and you start running into the reality of understanding, like, oh, we need to start looking at mold. You have elevated inflammatory markers. We don't know why. We need to start looking for environmental toxins. We need to start looking at heavy metals. And when you start going down these rabbit holes, it gets very time consuming, very expensive. Um, and a lot of times I feel like the tests are overly sensitive and then you start potentially unnecessarily treating and it just gets real murky real fast.
I 100% agree. So I've always felt that these tests were a little bit in the weeds for people because patients don't understand it. Doctors barely understand them. Let's get real.
Right.
And where the muscle testing has helped, that's where the muscle testing's
Yeah.
really helped
Yeah.
because I can avoid a bunch of tests. Like, I can go ahead and treat the gut, hit 85% of people, and I don't have to test anything. And so then we test them maybe after the 6 weeks of doing the basic healing modalities that seem to work for everybody. So I completely agree there.
If there was a way to, I would love a way to quantify, to measure the output of muscle testing or some kind of energy. There's a couple of different ways out there. Because what I've seen with the providers that we have found to be effective for us, because I am a data person, I would say, great, let's do this, but let's also test it.
I love it.
and potentially not even tell the provider, right? Because I can do the testing. I will say that they, again, 100% of the time have been right.
Before, when I first met my my naturopath, my dad is a mathematician, my husband's a tax attorney. They both were like, "You cannot do this. You went
Numbers.
to Emory Medical School. Like, what are you doing? You're gonna
Right.
sell vitamins and you're gonna ruin your reputation and all those things." But this was,
Uh-huh.
almost 20 years ago, and I felt so bad, and I had gotten helped so dramatically that I just didn't care what they were saying. But
Yeah.
it's definitely a different mindset than the surgeon that's data driven. And the best is going to be a partnership where we figure out how to bring in the data where maybe the intuitive person's leading with, I think we should check this.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to
It's
do.
definitely a blend, and I think I don't believe in coincidences, and my wife has gone down this pathway of being a very energetic, natural, feminine healer, as that is her natural state, and so she is drawn to this type of provider, whereas, I came from, my father was a surgeon, I'm a surgeon, like, we have this very, like, hard steel, like, "Show me the numbers, show me the data," uh, but I think there's a reason why we're together, right?
Oh,
And so
100%.
I'm open to it, and I love what I see in it. I would just wish now I wish, as somebody who is in the space of building it, I'm like, how do I build it?
How do we
Right.
quantize
Because
slash.
because the I think the as I look at how to treat, the country, we go back to, like, what's broken in the country, and it is this gap between what the conventional system does well, because it does do some things well,
Absolutely.
versus what people are looking for, which is not that. Like, it's good that we can, if you have a heart attack, you can get a stent in under 60 minutes. Amazing. If you were in a bad car crash, you can be in the trauma bay, in the OR in under an hour,
Yeah.
like, life-saving stuff. That's amazing. But people aren't looking for that. They're
No,
glad they have it.
people, yeah,
What they're
people just want
looking
to know how to
for,
feel
yeah,
better.
what they're looking for is like, I don't feel very good. I know that I could have better energy. I want to be there for my kids. I want to be there for my spouse. I want to be able to think straight. My God. So they're looking for the things that you and I are talking about. But then when I look at how to do that, how to build that at scale, it becomes very challenging with the tools that we currently have access to. If there were a way to train and reliably use these tools like muscle testing, this is for, I mean, you have to have somebody to do it, but it's essentially free. You don't need a test. You don't need a tool. You don't
Correct.
need any kind of instrumentation. You just need to trust your intuition.
Yeah.
So that brings me to intuition.
Yeah.
So you have a book coming out. It's called The Unwritten Prescription. What does that mean?
So the unwritten prescription is the fact that with our traditional system the way it is, as patients, you've basically been forced to leave your sovereignty, your intuition at the door, right? We have to just do whatever the person in the white coat says. And I did that and it helped me when I was 15. And then I became a doctor myself to try to figure out the answers, realizing that the white coat does not give you the knowledge as to what's actually going on. And when I had to go back, I think when I had to go back and see all those practitioners again, I had a crazy experience where I was having a lot of thyroid eye problems. And I went to a thyroid eye specialist and I'd studied a lot about T3 protocols and different things. So I go in, I ask him questions. He wanted nothing, he didn't want to hear anything about what I had to say. He just wanted to operate on my eyes. And when I left, I think the nurse had a button under the desk because he came running out of another exam room when I didn't schedule my surgery. What's the issue? We talked about this. And I said, I'm just gonna think about it. Thank you so much. And that was right when I met the naturopath, but about a month later, I got a letter firing me from his practice for
Yeah.
non-compliance. And I went to my car that day crying again. It's another crying moment where I was feeling the pain of all the patients that were having surgeries because they didn't know there was an alternative. I've never had any surgery on my eyes. The naturopath fixed the issue. And so I think for me, the book is about bringing back that knowing and knowing that there's a place for it where you can actually what we've done is in each chapter we've got a sovereign prescription, so it's sort of like the prescription you were never given by your doctor. So what can you do at home to try to investigate which areas need more support, and then what we also recommend what to ask your practitioner. So it's like things you can do on your own, things to ask your practitioner. And then I love tying the spiritual side to everything because it's always there. If somebody's got thyroid, they haven't used their voice. It's pretty much across the board that if you really want to heal, you have to face that spiritual side too. And so we address all that in the book.
Wow, that's a really big space.
Yeah,
Can we get into the spiritual piece?
sure.
So when you start when you start combining medicine with spiritual, I think we're breaking down some kind of imaginary barrier that's always existed. I mean, probably since the early 1900s, right? As soon as our system was created the way that it is now, we pushed all of that out of the way because they needed data and they needed to be able to use tools that they could identify and
And
put
they
their
needed cash.
and they needed cash. Yes,
Uh-huh.
we can talk about that. But let's talk about spiritual because I think that if we are going to heal this nation from a health perspective, you cannot ignore the spiritual piece. So what does that mean to you?
So what it means to me is that if we put our own knowledge of what's going on with our own bodies and we shove it down just to keep going, or we answer questions in the way we think the doctor wants us to, we can't really access what's going on because our body, when it's giving us symptoms, it's typically just trying to have a conversation. It's not, there's not anything more than that. It wants you to listen, and a lot of times it's repressed trauma. It could be other issues that have happened. It could be in your fascia. We now understand our fascia carries a lot of memory. So there's so many exciting things we're actually understanding now that we didn't understand even 5 years ago. And I think COVID was an actual big eye-opening of positive for everyone because many people knew there was something off, but they didn't know what to do about it. And now they're witnessing that they should have listened to their intuition. And I spend a lot of time telling people just let that go, but let's let it be a lesson for moving forward. Like, questioning is okay. That's what medicine's about, is called the practice of medicine because it evolves. Like the point is we don't understand everything. That's principle 3. So if we don't understand everything, like, be open that there may be more out there and ask the questions and trust your intuition, trust your body, and don't just do things. That's where I see a lot of problems in the biohacking space because you've got these people telling you what your numbers should look like, and many people feel like they've let people down or they're not enough. You get that kind of that I'm not enough, I didn't do it right kind of energy.
Yeah,
And that's not what's actually going on in their body.
that's amazing. The Gosh, how do we even begin to tackle the spiritual side for somebody? So I'll just give you some examples. Maybe this
Yeah.
will be helpful. So I think a lot of my patients tend to be sort of like 60 plus. So decades of living in the medical system that we have, the culture that we are. And let's just use somebody who has, let's say they have a religious background, just for example. Um, if someone has a religious background, they hang their hat on, from a spirituality perspective, on organized religion. How do you help them to see that there is more?
That's a great question. If they're open to it, I actually refer a lot of patients to the ancient wisdom of Kabbalah because it's prior to any religion, and it actually unites the religions, and it asks the questions about, why is this in my movie? Just letting them pause and look at their own reactivity, claim it, and figure out, like, is there something in me that needs to be repaired that these lessons are coming in, whether they're physical lessons or emotional lessons. Most things that happen in life are actually a gift on this process of evolution. So I try to teach patients that they're not everybody's willing to learn it. And I think the younger we can get to them, the better, just because you're right. Once they hit a certain age and they've been in a system that's shut them down for so long, the gaslighting becomes so significant that they will end up gaslighting themselves. So then their intuition is blocked really just because of them. That's the principle number 2. Like they have intuition, but it's shoved down there because of cultural conditioning, their religion. So I just support and ask them to kind of come into whatever the easiest terms are. So it might be journaling or soaking in Epsom or getting out and getting the morning sun. I do that a lot where I tell people, just ask the earth if we can get you back connected. We're supposed to be on this planet for a reason. So if you can ask the earth or the trees to take what's not yours, and then ask the sun and the trees to bring you the light with the space that you created by clearing the negative, like something basic like that, like getting them back into nature is always a good start.
Yeah, those are great starts. So one of my favorite, there's a lot of favorites in there. Some of my favorite um, Kabbalah principles. So you mentioned reactivity, that switch from being reactive to being proactive. I love this because I have friends from all sorts of different religious backgrounds, and it is what I love about the principles of Kabbalah is that it does unify everybody. So it doesn't matter if you're a Muslim or a Christian, we still all have these same reactive natures. We're all human, and we all. If you go back just in my day today, how many times was that reactive in a Slack conversation? I can think of one right now. Talking to my family, talking like a text message or whatever, it happens all the time, and I think it doesn't matter what our religious framework is. If we are able to take a look at those and think about how we could have done that in a different way, take a breath, think about the bigger picture, be proactive in our response. Every time I do that, that feeling of the light, right? And I'm referring to the light with a capital
Yes.
L. Getting out in nature does the same thing. Some of the interviews that we've done this week have been people have been talking about these same things: forest bathing, neutralizing your immune system, not in a bad way, but like balancing it
Mhm.
out, right?
Yeah.
Um, Balancing parasympathetic, sympathetic. All of these things, which some of these we can measure, are all based off the same thing. Which brings me to this idea of like, okay, this is how we do it. The biggest negative feedback I get from my patients when I start talking about all these things is, I don't have time for that.
Mhm.
So how do you tackle that? How do you tackle the reality of our like the busy world right now? We're in Midtown Manhattan is busy,
Yes.
right? How do we help people to understand the power and the value of seeking out this type of spiritual path?
I think we talked about the device that you can wear and still exist. I think that helps just because if you can calm down the noise any which way, the spirituality can come in a little bit easier. But I would say making it simple for people. So, like, whether it's 5 minutes, that's what I always try to do 5 minutes here or there and having them have some kind of accountability. But being outside is the easiest one. So, we now are proving to tie back to mitochondria that our mitochondria are clocks. They know what time it is and they need to know what time it is. So part of why people feel so sick is because they're in these blue light controlled environments and the mitochondria don't know what they're supposed to be doing. So just getting people to get outside and then if I give them that like I need you to get outside for 5 minutes to make sure you're still going to have your metabolism going and when you're out there let's connect to the trees and the grass. Most people, it may take a little bit of time, but if you give them shorter windows where they don't have to meditate for an hour, like it's 5 minutes, is fine. Then I tend to get response, and over time, they shift. Some faster than others.
Joe Dispenza might disagree with you.
Yes, they might.
An hour, at least.
And I do enjoy. I've been doing his hour-long meditation since I went to the retreat. So I think that was
For how long have you been doing that?
it's been over a year. Yeah.
What time do you wake up?
30 minutes to an hour. It depends what 5:30. If I get up at 5:30, I'll try to do the hour.
Yeah.
Um, and then I do my workout later in the day. I used to do my workout in the morning, but we now know that's not the best time anyway. So it's great because these clocks like to be stressed more around 3 to 5 than they do first thing in the morning.
Right. Anything else about mitochondria we need to hit?
I think understanding that they're the canary in the coal mine. So people we're taught in biology and we're taught in med school that they're just the powerhouse of the cell, and that's so incomplete. It's kind of ridiculous. So, and in addition, the amount that we get taught about the mitochondria in med school is non-existent, right? It's just severe mitochondrial diseases that are genetic, and that's all we learn. So I think just having everybody know that you've got these brilliant, they were their own bacteria billions of years ago, that you've got these in almost every cell, just your red cells are the only one that don't have it. And so you have a sensor in every cell that is feeling its environment. So that, like, when we say canary in the coal mine, that's it's got this ability to see if it's a safe environment or not. So if you're stuck in your stories in your head, if you're going, like you said, Midtown Manhattan without a break and you're in blue lights and you're not touching nature, the mitochondria are going to yell out, and they need to be listened to, or your function and your ability to really hit that goal that everybody wants to hit of performance is just going to be suppressed.
Yeah. If we could leave the listeners with some maybe immediate next steps, let's just maybe start with mitochondria and then we can work maybe backwards in our conversation. What would be some immediate steps that somebody could take to improve mitochondrial function?
So I love to give an analogy of the plant because this is an easy one for listeners. So the chloroplast and the mitochondria look exactly the same. And I did not know that until my daughter asked her to quiz her on biology. This is a few years ago. And she gave me this packet and it was all about the leaf. And I was like, Jordan, you said it was the mitochondria. And she's the one who looked at me and said, Mom, chloroplast and mitochondria are exactly the same. So when you're trying to figure out how to help your mitochondria, think about what your plant's like. So they need good sunlight, they're in a healthy earth, they have nice water. So and people talk to their plants and they grow better. So just think about your plant and do all those things. Get your feet in the earth, drink some structured water, expose your eyes to the sun, and speak nicely to yourselves.